special event, Making Peace with Nature and Delivering on Sustainable Development Goals in the Mediterranean. For those who wouldn't yet know our platform, let me briefly mention that we are a network of more than 100 institutions and secretariats based in Geneva that make this region one of the global hubs for environmental governance. Administrated by the United Nations Environment Programme and supported by Switzerland, we organize various networking activities, including regular multi-stakeholder roundtables and briefings on major environmental trends. And before I give the floor to today's moderator, who will guide you through this session, let me remind you that the documents presented today, the summary, as well as the video of the event will be made available on the webpage of this event. It is now my pleasure to give the floor to BRUNO POZZI, the Director for the Pan-European region of the United Nations Environment Programme, who will be moderating the event and will also introduce you to our guests. BRUNO, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Diana, and I hope you can all hear me well. Good morning, Excellency, colleagues, and everyone online. It is really a pleasure to be with you this morning on this very special event organized by the GEN with the support of Switzerland and with our good friends of the Barcelona Convention and MAP office. Colleagues, we must make peace with nature, and our development cannot be one that keeps ignoring nature, its values and the benefits it provides to our economic development and societies. As you know, nature was a very central theme in the 5th Environment Assembly a few weeks ago, and a call was made for decisive actions to protect and restore nature, to apply nature-based solutions in order to achieve the SDGs in the social, economic and environmental dimensions, so that we could truly address climate change, but also poverty, and build back better in a post-pandemic world. In this regard, the recently launched UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration is the latest call for action by the UN family, and it sets a dynamic strategy of empowering, investing, and setting incentives to have the right leadership to set the world on track for sustainability using a decade to restore our ecosystems. Because nature and the solutions it provides are part and parcel of this priority area, especially in the Mediterranean region, which has historically featured one of the most human-dominated landscapes in the world. Landscape modification, which was previously driven by agriculture and forestry, but nowadays is driven by urbanization and industrialization. And therefore, applying nature-based solutions to ensure ecological connectivity, to restore depleted ecosystems and build resilience to climate change is crucial. The Mediterranean basin is one of the hotspots of biodiversity in the world. It harbors high species richness and very specific endemic species. However, as we know, its ecosystem and its biodiversity are threatened by the pollution and by ecosystem degradation that starts actually kilometers away from the river deltas that make the Mediterranean Sea. Because when you pick up plastic on a beach in Rimini, in Bodrum, or in Djerba, there's a fair chance that it has been produced, designed, and sold thousands of kilometers away. The activities undertaken in the framework of the Barcelona Convention and the Mediterranean Action Plan are therefore indispensable to protect both the land-based and marine environment of the Mediterranean Sea. And as UNEP Regional Office, we're very proud to also support these activities and give them an echo in international Geneva, where many stakeholders are also convinced that nature is an ally to combat climate change, to prevent further zoonosis outbreak, and to secure life supporting ecosystems, where many actors as well are rethinking production and consumption patterns so that societies transition from a linear to a circular economy with less pollution and handling of waste. So to address these challenges and discuss them in international Geneva today, we've got an exceptional panel that will help us navigate the challenges faced by the Mediterranean. We are joined by His Excellency Ambassador Sadiq Arslan, the permanent representative of Turkey to the United Nations office in Geneva and other international organizations in Switzerland. From Athens, Greece, we've got Gaetano Leone, the coordinator of the UNEP MAP Barcelona Convention Secretariat. Also joining from Athens, a UNEP Young Champion of the Earth, Lefteris Arapakis. From Marseille in France, we are joined by Lina Tode, who is officer in charge of the Foresight Studies and Environmental Economics at Plan Bleu, which is a regional activity center of UNEP MAP. And from Malaga in Spain, we welcome Lourdes Lázaro from the corporate department of the IUCN Center for Mediterranean Cooperation. I want to thank this exceptional panel and speakers for making time for this important discussion we're having today. And together, I'm certain that we are going to do part of what is needed for the Mediterranean and to beat the drum here in Geneva and across the world because we are online. And with these words, I will now officially start the session by turning to my colleague, Gaetano Leone. So Gaetano, what is happening in the Mediterranean and why are you talking about a collision course with nature? Over to you.
Good morning, Bruno, Ambassador Arslan, and all the participants. It's a real pleasure to be here with you as a member of this, as you said, exceptional panel, and at least virtually back in Geneva, which has been my home for 7 years, some time back. Many thanks to the Europe office and to the Geneva Environment Network for hosting us. And thank you, Bruno, my friend, for the giant question that you threw at me. What's happening in the Mediterranean? Let me start by saying that taking the pulse of the Mediterranean and through rigorous environmental monitoring and assessment has been a crucial, a core function of the UNEP Mediterranean Action Plan, Barcelona Convention, since its beginning almost 5 decades ago. The Mediterranean is home to more than 512 million inhabitants, and it is experiencing acute symptoms of the triple planetary crisis of pollution, nature loss, and climate change, now compounded by pandemic, and in a context that it's been for immemorial times in the Mediterranean of great challenges and also great excitement, leadership, creativity, and opportunities. But let me focus on just very few figures. The Mediterranean is polluted by an estimated 730 tons of plastic waste every day. In the Mediterranean region, it is estimated that more than 228,000 people died prematurely in 2016 due to exposure only to air pollution. More than 1,000 non-indigenous marine species have been recorded in the Mediterranean Sea. You rightly said the Mediterranean, Bruno, is a biodiversity hotspot. In fact, it has a huge richness of species which are now suffering also from the invasion of these non-indigenous marine species coming into the basin. 20% reduction in crop productivity is projected by the year 2080, with spikes of up to 40% in North Africa. And the IPCC said it long ago, the Mediterranean is also a hotspot, but in negative terms, for climate change, and is warming 20% faster than the global average. So these are just some of the of many other worrying symptoms. What I'd like to emphasize is that the science has spoken. It has confirmed the urgency of taking action to tackle the triple environmental crisis or the multiple environmental crises in the Mediterranean. And this science is now encapsulated in the findings of the 2 reports sponsored by UNEP MAP, Barcelona Convention Secretariat, and prepared by Plan Bleu, one of our regional activity centers, as you said. State of the Environment and Development Report, launched in November last year, and the first assessment report, MAR1, of the Independent Network of Mediterranean Experts on Climate and Environmental Change, or MEDEC, that we are also co-sponsoring, also launched at the end of last year. My colleague Lina Tode, that you have already introduced, Deputy Director of Plan Bleu, will give more details later on during this, this panel, but I'd like just to capture the gist of their findings in trying to answer your question. The State of the Environment and Development Report, or SOED as we call it, is the most comprehensive regional assessment of its kind in a decade. And it warns with no uncertain terms that the Mediterranean is not on track to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. This may come as no surprise to most of us who work in this field, but the SOED also warns that relentless pressure on ecosystems from economic sectors will lead to irreversible environmental damage in the Mediterranean basin. At the same time, the MEDEC report, so the one on climate change, points to far-reaching impacts affecting both natural and socio-economic systems. Now, the publication of these reports in the midst of a global pandemic of zoonotic origin is a fitting and terrible coincidence. Both reports provide a timely surge of evidence in support of the One Health approach, whereby healthy ecosystems underpin human health. And the message is very clear. The Mediterranean region is on a collision course with nature. The European Commission President said it recently, humanity faces an existential threat. And this is very true. And it's no exaggeration in the Mediterranean, because the scale of the environmental crisis here is worsening rapidly, and it demands an adequate response. So a post-COVID, what we like to call a green renaissance in the Mediterranean. Green as the widest possible reference to environmental sustainability in its broadest sense, including a sustainable blue economy. And renaissance, which captures our longing for a post-COVID era that sees Mediterranean economies take off from more sustainable and resilient grounds. So the full implementation of obligations by the contracting parties of the Convention, which are the 21 coastal countries plus the European Union, and the participation of stakeholders, including civil society, organizations, businesses, informed citizens, constitute crucial building blocks for the green renaissance that we wish to see in the region. Enforcement is one of our absolute priority after almost 5 decades of maturing one of the most complete regulatory and institutional setup in any regional sea around the world. So we are not starting from scratch. But this normative build-up has now outpaced enforcement and compliance at the national level. And it's time for all of us, governments in primis, to start looking at the way we can launch a national recovery, which translates then in a regional recovery from COVID-19, taking advantage of the opportunities to boost the enforcement of and the compliance to the Barcelona Convention up to an unprecedented pace and scale. We also have a Mediterranean strategy for sustainable development, which provides a blueprint for green action aligned with the UN 2030 agenda and the Paris Agreement. Let me go for a moment back to the concept of Renaissance. As we know it, this was a period in European history marking the transition from the Middle Ages to modernity, and it occurred after the deep crisis of the Middle Ages was associated with great social, economic, and cultural changes. And similarly today, in the midst of a deep crisis exacerbated by the pandemic, Mediterranean countries stand at a crossroads. With the rollout of vaccination programs, now we start the countdown, with all the uncertainties still surrounding us, to the post-lockdown, post-COVID era. The dilemma that decision makers face is momentous, especially in national context, where economies had been in dire straits even before COVID-19, as we all know. But the case for recovering better and greener is indeed compelling. In theory, all the ingredients of a green renaissance in the Mediterranean are in place. because we have a robust science foundation, we have green technology that is fastly evolving. We are in a region where financial flows are pumping. The awareness, engagement of the public is very high. Regional solidarity in the context of the recovery, although challenging, is a reality. And we know the history of this region. This is a region where knowledge, where creativity, as I said before, where resilience, leadership have been characteristic traits, north, south, east, and ovest. So before I conclude, I want to say that we are doing everything we can to put the Green Renaissance on the Mediterranean agenda. Our next conference of the parties will be held in December 2021. That is the 22nd meeting of the parties to the Barcelona Convention, will be very generously hosted by Turkey, and I want to salute through His Excellency Ambassador Arslan also the courage and commitment of Turkey at this time to undertake such an initiative with us. We'll submit a raft of new anti-pollution, pro-sustainability regional plans and decisions for adoption. The delegates will also review and approve the UNEP MAP medium-term strategy until 2027, which is done on the model of the global UNEP strategy while considering the specificities of the Mediterranean. And so COP22 can serve as a regional forum for a high-level policy dialogue on flicking the green switch for a sustainable, resilient future in the Mediterranean. So I stop here, Bruno. I'll be happy to participate in the discussion later on. And once again, thank you very much for hosting us today.
Thanks a lot, Gaetano. You brilliantly answered the question. And let me now turn to His Excellency Ambassador Arslan. As Gaetano just said, Ambassador, Turkey will host the COP22, the 22nd meeting of the contracting parties of the Barcelona Convention and its protocols in December 2021. And Gaetano just pointed that it's going to be an opportunity to put the green renaissance of on the Mediterranean agenda. And I would like to see from you, what are the plans of Turkey as the host country to secure that environmental multilateralism continues to work as the Mediterranean stands indeed at a crossroads? How will you support this call for green renaissance in the Mediterranean? Ambassador, over to you.
Thank you, Bruno. And I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to Gaetano for his really uplifting and very guideful briefing on the matter. I'm a stranger to this file, but upon the instruction that we get from our government and the ministry, I will do my best, to explain Turkey's contribution, and the current contribution to the Barcelona process and the map. So let me start with thanking you all for organizing and attending this important and timely event on making peace with nature and delivering on the SDGs in the Mediterranean. I particularly like the title of this event, because if we don't make a peace with the nature, all other pieces will be null and void. So we cannot deliver our, let's say, responsibilities and the sense of justice to the future generations. And the Mediterranean is not an ordinary, let's say, sea mass or water mass. It is the cradle of our, it's the common cradle of our civilizations. Not just one, but many civilizations were born out of that region, as Gaetano rightly indicated. It is the cradle of science, innovation, and art and culture. So a new renaissance is certainly needed, because now, not in the sense of maybe political transition, but the way we consume, the way we waste, the way we, let's say, make use of energy resources. I mean, everything has to be changed, because the current state of our economic affairs is not sustainable. I mean, sooner or later, we need to change this kind of habits. And I think the Mediterranean basin is the right place, I mean, to make some exemplary practices. So if I just briefly go through the particular matters, first of all, my country is fully committed to the conservation and the sustainable use of seas and marine resources, and preservation of the Mediterranean marine and coastal environment, at the same time fostering plans to achieve sustainable development is of particular importance. The Mediterranean region is still facing important environmental challenges and disasters, and which we anticipate it will intensify in the future. Coping with these challenges require a shared understanding and joint actions. In this vein, my country has been contributing to the international endeavors through various multilateral mechanisms. Among these, of course, we attach an utmost importance to the Barcelona Convention. And we hail the success achieved by the Convention and the Mediterranean Action Plan so far, and we are proud of the contribution that all parties have made to this end. Within the Barcelona Convention, we have been very active in furthering the synergy for protecting the Mediterranean environment since 2002. We hosted 80th meeting of the convention in Istanbul in 2013, and in 2016, Istanbul Environment Friendly Cities Award was initiated to recognize the efforts of local authorities in promoting sustainable development in the Mediterranean coastal cities. And the Naples ministerial declaration, the output of the 21st meeting of the parties hosted by Italy, provided significant political will for the steps to take in the areas of climate change, biodiversity, and marine litter against increasing environmental pressures. Among other achievements, integration of planning and management approaches regarding marine and coastal areas has been a landmark outcome. As regards the COP22, Turkey will be hosting the COP22 of the convention between 7 and 10 December 2021 in Antalya. During the conference, we aim at further enhancing the efforts made until now and strengthening the past commitments under the framework of the convention. Concerning our future plans during and after the COP22, we aim at first promoting the circular economy for social and economic development. Secondly, increasing marine protected areas and managing them efficiently. And thirdly, enhancing efforts for a more climate resilient Mediterranean. Of course, I mean, we will be very happy to receive more inputs, more contributions from all stakeholders, and also from the Geneva Development Network. And also from GAETANO, because he has already worked on several issues. And we will, of course, go through all those reports and inputs, and then collectively we can set a proper agenda. So for the time being, it might be a bit premature, but with your contributions, it will be enriched and become much more efficient action plan or a guidance for our common efforts. And with regards to our national, let's say, practices or efforts concerning the issues that are covered within the framework of the convention, we provide useful legislation and good practices to address environmental problems in line with the sustainable development principles. In this context, my country makes great efforts, particularly increasing the number of protected areas in the sea to provide protection, restoration, and sustainable use of ecosystems, and by implementing required policies and measures. For the protection of the Mediterranean against pollution, for instance, we initiated the Blue Card system for tracking sea vessel waste in our coastal regions. And so far, more than 62,000 vessels have been provided with the Blue Card so far. In 2020, 486 beaches and 22 marinas in Turkey were awarded with the blue flag. In this regard, Turkey ranked third among the parties to the convention. Furthermore, our recently adopted zero waste approach in line with the EU circular economy targets. For the last 2 years, we have already achieved 80% decrease in plastic bag waste thanks to our zero waste approach. So these may be simple but small, let's say, steps can make a huge difference. I mean, decreasing this kind of waste by 80%, it is a commendable achievement, and the public awareness is every day growing, and hopefully we will score even higher percent. And as far as biological diversity is concerned, we also have made significant investment to increase the forest areas for the improvement of biodiversity. And with the ancestral seed project, we have provided the protection of the plant varieties that constitutes Turkey's gene resources. And we highly value the preservation of the biodiversity at global and regional levels, including the Mediterranean. And GAETANO talked about the endemic plants and other creatures. Really, this area is extremely critical for preserving the overall biological diversity in the region, because as far as I remember, only in Turkey, almost half of the endemic plants of Europe somehow is in Turkey. I mean, so we have a huge responsibility to preserve this kind of things. I mean, because Anatolia and the Turkish territories, when it comes to the seas surrounding Turkey, as well as high altitude mountains. I mean, we are part of the Balkans, Caucasus, Black Sea, Aegean, and the Mediterranean and the Middle East. I mean, so it brought us a huge responsibility to preserve this diversity. And last but not least, we will host the 16th conference of the parties of the UN Convention on biological diversity. So it will be another contribution that we will make. And we believe that blue economy projects in the Mediterranean is another field of cooperation. These projects aim at economic growth through through sustainable use of marine resources while preserving the nature. And we are participating to the efforts of the Union for the Mediterranean in the field of the blue economy facilities. Let me conclude, because I took your time a lot. We are glad to see that Barcelona Convention and Mediterranean Action Plan set a sound base for its parties and a good example for other regions. And UNEP and MAP system has become one of the leading regional CES programs. And we, as the host country of COP22, we will do our utmost to further promote this successful example. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Ambassador, and really thanks for this emphasizing the commitment, not only at national level, but towards environmental multilateralism of your country. This really is a boost to the chances of seeing the COP22 of the Barcelona Convention becoming a launch pad for sustainability in the context of the recovery from COVID-19. We've got in theory all ingredients for a green renaissance. The science, as spoken, is clear. We've got several Mediterranean countries, including Turkey, which are at the cutting edge of green technology. We've got financial flows who are now redirected towards sustainability. And we've got a regional solidarity, which is visible in the Mediterranean. So if we go down to put ourselves in the shoes of a decision maker in the national context, where should we begin? Where is the green switch? And to discuss this, I would like to ask Lina to come now. Lina, you coordinated the preparation of the report on the state of environment and development of the Mediterranean. And what does this major UNEP MAP Plan Bleu report, the most comprehensive assessment of its kind, indicates on the Mediterranean? What does it say about the levers of green action that decision makers can activate to achieve our goals? Lina, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me among the panel today to present some of the findings of the SDGs. Thanks for asking these tricky questions. Very difficult question, because we are experiencing a systemic problem where everything is linked. There's no such thing as a single linear relationship between the different subsystems, sectors, or habitats. And there is no single guilty sector with which we could start with. And just like Ambassador Arslan said in his statement, everything needs to be changed. So where to start? We could go back to the root causes of this systemic crisis that we experience in the Mediterranean and in the world, by the way. And we must go back to the drivers of change. So the main driver of change in the planet's recent history are human activities. And what drives human activities are, on one hand, our basic needs for food, shelter, etc., but also, on the other hand, our prevalent values and aspirations. In our current society, these dominant values and aspirations include systemic incoherencies with sustainability. The accumulation of material things to a certain social status, the frequent renewal of cars, smartphones, furniture, etc. And therefore, our values translate into unsustainable consumption and production patterns. So if there's one thing to start with, one place to begin for a green renaissance, it's our collective mindset that we will need to move. It will be the most efficient lever of action. So on this slide that we see now here, the SOEG clearly shows how the Mediterranean accumulates unique and vulnerable resources that are increasingly under pressure. The region is a biodiversity hotspot with the highest rate of endemic species in the world. The region is also a cultural hotspot, hosting more than 190 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. At the same time, population concentration is a main pressure, with 70% of the Mediterranean population living in cities and around 1/3 in the Mediterranean coastal zone. And this situation is even further exacerbated by intense tourist flows. Indeed, the Mediterranean is the world's #1 tourism destination, with around 30% of the world's tourist arrivals. The Mediterranean is also one of the world's busiest shipping lanes and hosts 17% of the world's oil tanker capacity. This number of effects: air and water pollution, underwater noise, collisions, land take by port infrastructure, etc. And even without climate change, the unique natural characteristics of the Mediterranean are already under pressure. Now, on the next slide, we see that climate change further exacerbates the situation and already shows its effects today. So the first ever Mediterranean assessment report provides the most comprehensive and recent picture of climate and environmental change. This MAR1 report has been developed by MEDEC, the Mediterranean Network of Experts on Climate and Environmental Change, which is hosted by Bleu. And the MAR1 report, described like the sister reports by GAETANO earlier in this intervention, they have been developed really in close coordination, so the findings are aligned. The air in the Mediterranean has already warmed by more than 1.5 degrees. And it is projected to reach around 2.2 degrees when the world will reach the 1.5 threshold at around 2040. Seawater has also already warmed at around almost 0.5 degree, and it could reach 3.5 degrees warming by the end of the century. And at the same time, the sea level will rise by up to 2.5 meters according to some projections, putting at risk more than 20 million people that live at altitudes below 5 meters in the Mediterranean. So many of the mentioned heritage sites are also located at low altitudes and are at risk of erosion or flooding due to sea level rise. And the lagoon of Venice is the most prominent example for this risk. Now let's wrap this up on the next slide. Despite these alarming statements, we must recognize that the mobilization of stakeholders made it possible to achieve progress in certain areas, if compared to no intervention scenarios. This is true, for example, for bathing water quality, which has improved in many places, or for accidents at sea that involve oil or hazardous or noxious substances. These have largely decreased, and it's mainly thanks to international efforts under the Marpol Convention and our sister regional activity center, REMPEC, here in the Mediterranean. But however, these areas of progress have not been sufficient to reduce pressures and degradation of the Mediterranean. They have not allowed Mediterranean coastal populations to adapt to current and projected environmental and climate change and to increase their resilience. We're not on track to achieve neither the good environmental status of the Mediterranean Sea nor the SDGs by 2030. And what the Mediterranean needs is a fundamental reorganization of the Mediterranean system overall, with profound changes of behavior at all levels and in all areas. The flicking of the green switch must be generalized and mainstreamed into collective and individual decisions. Here, actually, the image of a binary state of the switch, which is either on or off, is a very helpful way. We need to completely abandon the unsustainable development paths and organize a systemic switch. The half-hearted decisions and policies will not have their place in resolving the challenges ahead. Now, this last slide identifies 10 levers of action to achieve the profound changes that are needed to avoid the projected and already ongoing systemic failures. I would just go into some of them. I will start with enforcement. The UNEP-MAP Barcelona Convention system can play a major role in fostering sustainability transitions. However, this requires an urgent step up from plannings and commitments to widespread implementation on the ground and effective enforcement. In fact, the implementation and enforcement of commitments are lagging far behind the ambition of commonly agreed, well-informed and appropriate objectives and measures. What we experience is a huge implementation gap, and therefore doing what we say we would do is one of the main levers to activate for decision makers at the national level, but also regionally and locally. The next lever of action I will dig into a little bit is foresight. Let's take the question of the green switch to the image of the light, switch on or off. So when we are about to flick the light switch, we know what to expect after we have pushed the button. The light will go on. And this is much less true for the green switch. We do have some kind of collective imaginary of the dark state, let's say, which is not flicked. That will be a dark picture of multiple crises, collapse, flooding, mass extinctions, etc. We have a much more vague idea of what the green state could be. It is expressed in the SDGs, in the Mediterranean Strategy for Sustainable Development, but actually the narrative of what life would be like is missing. And this is a crucial gap because the human mind needs some kind of representation of a situation in order to actually find ways to get there. In addition, a national decision maker will have to deal with trade-offs that exist between different objectives, also within the SDGs, and that depend on the local conditions. So the most prominent trade-offs that between SDGs are located, for example, between economic objectives and environmental ones. And after all, the picture of a green state is not so clear, and flicking the switch comes with a high number of uncertainties and unknown situations. This is why within the UNEP Barcelona Convention system, we are now working on a foresight exercise that we call MED 2050, which has regional but also local implementations. Local implementations are in Morocco on the watershed level and in the Région Sud, a French region that borders the Mediterranean. The aim of MED 2050 is to shed light on possible futures and to propose to come up with alternative shared narratives or representations of the future to the current off state, the dark state of the switch. So I will stop here for now, but I would like to stress that we at Plan Bleu and the UNEP Barcelona Convention system are looking forward to further working together with our contracting parties on flicking this switch and to step up to our shared responsibility, which is the objective of the Barcelona Convention, actually, to preserve and sustainably develop the common heritage for the benefit and enjoyment of present and future generations. So next stop will be at COP22. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Lina, for these insights and for providing us with a view of the switches that we need to turn on to help us all delivering what you said we do what we said we would do indeed, and it's extremely urgent that we do this, that we turn the switches on, and what you highlighted can be very useful for decision makers on both sides of the Mediterranean basins to understand what needs to be done. And you mentioned a number of sectors: tourism, agriculture, fisheries, agriculture, industry, transport that needs to adapt, to transform. And I'd like to pick one on maritime transport. I'd like to turn again to GAETANO. And GAETANO, could you highlight a little bit what your office, what UNEP is working on, a roadmap for the designation of the Mediterranean as an emission control area for sulfur oxides, and this could be part of the COP22 in December. What are the plans?
Thank you, Bruno. Yes, indeed, you really put the finger on what we consider one of the most ambitious, but also possibly difficult decisions that will be made in Antalya in December. I mean, the background, as Lina already said, is that the Mediterranean Sea is one of the busiest seas in the world. 24% of the global fleet of ships passes through this semi-closed sea in 2019, including container ships, gas, oil, chemical tankers. I mean, a lot of attention was focused on what happened a couple of weeks ago when the Suez Canal was obstructed by a giant container ship, and what impact it had on global. That's a measure, really, of the importance of the Mediterranean as a shipping route on the global, system. So on top of that, the Mediterranean is just in 2019, there was more than 17% of worldwide cruises came to this little regional sea of ours. So the point I'm trying to make is that talking about specifically what we call the SECA sulfur oxide emission controlled area designation of the Mediterranean is the fact that there is obviously a need to invest in sustainability by transforming key economic sectors, which are identified as drivers of environmental degradation. And this is obviously, the maritime transport is one of them. This translates into paying what we can call a green premium, a premium that is the cost of decoupling growth from pollution. But that cost has extraordinary benefits that offset it, because benefits in public health, in the specific case that we are discussing, and in healthier ecosystems. So for several years now, we've been preparing with our contracting parties and partners the possible designation, as I said, of the Mediterranean Sea as a SOX emission controlled area. And the benefits are clear. We've done several feasibility studies, because such a designation would cap the content of sulfur oxide in fuel oil burned by ships at 1/5 of the legal limit currently in place. So it would lead, from our studies, would translate to a 78% drop in sulfur oxide emissions. And in the Mediterranean, which, as I said, hosts the world's busiest shipping lanes, such a reduction would be of a magnitude that would really matter, especially in the populous coastal zones, because exposure to certain concentration of air pollutants, we know it well, is linked to risks of contracting lung cancer, cardiovascular illnesses, asthma. Cleaner air means better health, especially now, where we've been even more, how can I say, educated about this during the period of this pandemic, which hits specifically on lungs and respiratory issues, would bring significant benefits also to the environment, because when released in the atmosphere, sulfur oxide can cause acid rain, and that is, as we know, exacerbates ocean acidification. And it would also yield improvements in visibility, both inland and at sea, across large swathes of North Africa and in the Straits of Gibraltar. But without going into too many details, we also realize that such a process is very political, is very charged, it has financial, technological implications that may also, exacerbate the inequalities around the Mediterranean. But yet, I have to say, and it is a process that I have to say, as Lina said, with REMPEC, our Regional Activity Center in Malta, which is a joint initiative with the IMO, International Maritime Organization. So it's a process that happens in the global context of IMO. My last words are, the parties are sensible to this discussion. We hope to have them on board in December, but I need to say that whether we do it at this COP or at next COP, the trend towards such a capping of emissions there is no turning back. This is something that happens at the global level, and that our own populations, especially around the coastal areas in port cities, have been clamoring for. And so I do hope that Antalya will, lead us towards such a designation. Thank you, Bruno.
Thanks a lot, Gaetano, for this insight on the ambition that we've got to control SOX in the region, and indeed by an investment definitely making huge benefits, not only in terms of environment, but also economic transformation, health, and so on, livelihoods as could benefit from this. So thanks for this work, and let's hope that political momentum will be there in Antalya. Now, we've also spoken a lot in or touched a lot on the biodiversity dimension of the Mediterranean basin. And I'd like to turn to Lourdes now. Lourdes, I know that at the IUCN Center for the Mediterranean Cooperation, you are working closely with, of course, UNEP MAP Regional Activity Center on especially on the protected areas and developing a new strategic action program on biodiversity protection in the Mediterranean. In your view, what are the priorities that we should focus on and what are the expectations that you have from COP22? Lourdes, over to you.
So I would like to start off by thanking the Geneva Environmental Network for this invitation, and on behalf of my team and the IUCN Secretariat, it's an honor to be here with the Excellency Sadit Arslan and also Gaetano and the rest of the panelists. And regarding your question on the expectation from COP22, first I would like to underscore, although it seems obvious, that biodiversity knowledge of the marine environments is still very unknown, and in particular in the Eastern Mediterranean and North Africa, and as well as offshore environments and deep sea oceans. And this is much more relevant when we talk about the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean is an exceptional place. All the panelists recognize that is a biodiversity hotspot, and this hotspot is threatened. Biodiversity conservation is still, conservation status still goes down. And we have some figures behind that. According to the IUCN, at least 90 marine species are threatened with extinction, especially sharks and rays, marine mammals, sea turtles, corals, and birds, due to multiple factors, including interaction with fisheries, degradation of habitats and marine water, coastal development activities, climate change, and other anthropogenic pressures. It is a worrying number without any doubt, but becomes even more when we consider that at least 23% of these species analyzed don't have enough information to define their conservation status. So put in few words, there is still a huge amount of biodiversity that we still don't know much about, and they could be part of the solution to this pandemic or other pandemics, especially in its application in medicine. So we need to foster scientific research to fill these existing gaps. Nevertheless, for some of these species, we have already management measures. We have already these actions. However, what we need is to implement these action plans effectively in many cases. And scientific evidence is an essential component for management decisions. Therefore, the post-2021 should be designed to take a greater accountability to measure our management plans, and that will require improved monitoring. Both of these actions would facilitate a more effective assessment of progress and enable more insightful policy responses. Well, in this scenario, marine protected areas play a key role in preserving these species. It is important to recognize that governments have sped up the designation of marine protected areas in the last years. We have mentioned earlier Excellency Sadit Arslan about the effort done in Turkey about this forum marine protected areas. But however, only 10% of these marine protected area sites implement properly management plans. So it's urgent to consolidate this network of MPAs, as well as to identify and build on other effective area-based conservation measures with adequate management plans, with financial resources, and with skilled staff. And we also need to look after our coastal ecosystems, wetlands, deltas, estuaries, dunes, because they can all provide important ecosystem services to our societies. And the Paris agreements recognize the contribution of this coastal and marine ecosystem restore in reducing net greenhouse gas emission, with important co-benefits for people and biodiversity. However, if we continue emitting the current amount of green gases and even more, a rapid and dangerous amount of climate change impacts will occur. And we have some data behind that. sea has increased in its amount of CO2 absorbed, and this consequently has driven up marine surface temperatures and is causing a decline in ocean pH, as known as ocean acidification. And this ocean acidification has a strong effect in the Mediterranean biota, in biodiversity, in fishery resources, and at the end of the day, on our livelihoods as well. So how are we addressing this at IUCN? IUCN is promoting a range of measures to conserve and restore this marine and coastal ecosystem. And our goal is to help decision makers adopt nature-positive policies and measures guided by tools such as the IUCN Global Standard for Nature-Based Solutions or the IUCN Green List for Protected and Conserved Areas. But to do so, we need to work with other sectors, with private and public, to improve coordination also between the various national government agencies, promote maritime spatial planning, and the principle of integrated coastal zone management. And of course, redouble efforts to improve waste management and waste collection, particularly in the Mediterranean coastal cities and watersheds. And of course, reducing the growth of rates of plastic production and eliminating the single-use plastic products. Well, it's for many people here and around on our, people who are attending this event, it's time to reinforce our regional institutions and political frameworks, as the Barcelona Convention, the General Fisheries Commission for the Mediterranean, and also the ACOBANS Agreement. And this year, under the Barcelona Convention, stakeholders will discuss and agree the new post-2021 SAT-BIO program, the Strategic Action Program for the Conservation of Biological Diversity in the Mediterranean region. And this important program will identify the needs, the priorities, the orientations and synergies for the conservation and the sustainable use of marine and coastal biodiversity in the Mediterranean, following the CBD global goals at a structural approach by sub-regions. So it's a lot of work to be done by the end of this year, and I look at GAETANO and the presidency of Turkey, because they will lead this process, and it will be a very important document for the Mediterranean region. And hence, to keep starting to reverse the current tendency, in my opinion, we need to reinforce the solution starting from the local level and the local appreciation of the importance of protecting and preserving our coastal and marine ecosystems. And consequently, it will also be important to carry out outreach activities aimed at fishermen and marine recreation businesses, diving, sailors, and of course, youngsters. Because of all of them, they can be the champions of this transformative change to raise awareness of the importance of protecting and preserving our coastal and marine ecosystem in the region. So many thanks, and let's imagine a new renaissance for the Mediterranean region for this decade. I hope we can discuss these ideas later on in this open discussion.
Thanks a lot, Lourdes. And with your presentation and also ending on what you just said, that we need a mobilization, I would like now to turn to Lefteris Arapakis. Lefteris, we've just heard about the state of biodiversity in the Mediterranean. It is something that you experienced firsthand, because as a fisherman, you noticed that you were pulling more plastics than fish from your nets, and your action was to react on this and really take decisive action, and thanks to this you were nominated and crowned as Young Champion of the Earth 2020 for Europe. So you co-founded Enalea, which is a social enterprise based in Greece, and you launched a wide-scale plastic clean of the Mediterranean Sea by working with other fishermen and building up a model for this. Tell us about your experience in engaging with citizens and winning hearts and minds for sustainability. Lefteris, over to you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this event. It's a real honor to be able to be in this discussion. I would like to speak about our experience in engaging with citizens. And in order to do that, I would like to tell you a little bit more about our story so far to get our background. So my name is Lefteris Arapakis. I am from Greece, and I am the co-founder and director of Enalia, which in Greek means together with the fishermen. We started in 2016 because of the capital controls in the country. Unemployment had exploded, and we wanted to do something about that. At the point, I was discussing with my father. My family, they have been fishermen for 5 generations. And my father, as a typical fisherman, he was complaining that they couldn't find the personnel for their fishing boat. So together with a friend, we said, okay, let's do something about that. So that's why we created the first school for professional fishing in the country. And we have trained until today more than 115 unemployed people. The point is, I didn't know anything about fishing. I think even today, I think I'm the worst fisherman in the Mediterranean Sea. So what we did is that we went on a fishing trip to see the whole procedure. And our first trip was in the Aegean Sea, in Cyclades. And there, we were really shocked to see that fishermen, together with the fish, they pulled together also plastic, lots of it. In our first day, what got my attention was a can of a soda drink, which had bleached from the years. So as I was looking at it and saw the expiration date, I saw it had expired back in 1987. It was 30 years in the sea. So I'm having it here in my hand and looking at it, and then a fisherman takes it from my hand and throws it back in the sea, saying, plastic is not our problem. So we researched on the topic, and all the studies indicate that by 2050, there will be more plastic than fish in the sea. So we realized there will be no use to get out there more fishermen if there will be no fish. So we decided to act upon that. In the beginning, we started small with some fishermen from our local port in Piraeus. And the results were astonishing. They started bringing a lot of plastic back in the land. And what really surprised me was that a lot of this plastic, as you mentioned before, was not coming from Greece, but also from other Mediterranean countries as well. So we realized that it is not a national challenge that we need to face, but a rather Mediterranean challenge. And this is why we decided to launch a project called Mediterranean Cleanup. And our vision is to mobilize fishing communities all over Mediterranean to collect plastic from the sea. So this is what we have been doing the last 2 years. Currently, we are working with 21 fishing communities from Greece and Italy, a total of 1,000 professional fishermen. And we are cleaning from the sea every week 4 tons of plastic. The point is, as you know, collecting plastic from the sea is not the solution to the problem. It's like we're in a sinking boat and we have a bucket and we put water out of the boat. It buys us some time, but it's not solving the problem. In order to solve the problem, we need to stop the hole, stop the leakage from the hole, prevent plastic from entering the sea. This is why we collect the used fishing equipment from all the fishermen that participate in our work, prevent it from entering the sea and become the deadliest form of plastic, ghost nets. So what we are actually doing is that we have established a bottom-up approach, implementing really simple solutions, and we couldn't have done that without engaging with citizens. And another reason that we did that is that in the beginning, we didn't know what to do with the waste. Nobody was taking that. So what we decided to do, and what we slowly created, was create partnerships with recycling companies. And now half of this material is recycled locally, and the rest, we send it to upcycling facilities in Europe. And it's turned into products. We send the nets to an environmental organization in the Netherlands called Healthy Seas, and they turn it into socks and swimming suits. And the plastic bottles that we collect from the sea to a fashion company in Madrid, and they upcycle it into fashion products. So all of this work was made possible because we are able to engage with fishermen. We are able to speak with their own language. And we got some learnings from that experience. I think 4 main learnings is what I would like to share with you today. The first one, and really important, is to be able to listen to these communities. What's going well, what goes wrong, what can be done better. So the answers never stop to surprise me. The most recent one was that during the pandemic, during the first lockdown in Greece, many fishermen told me that they didn't like that we're doing the main decision-making in our office in Athens, but they would like us to get people in the local communities and empower them and do the decision-making locally. And we did that. And this took all of the micromanagement out of our hands, and our results accelerated in just a few weeks. The second thing that I believe that we are doing is that we are not telling to the citizens what needs to be done. We show them how it can be done. We show them solutions that can be implemented locally, and we actually lead this change. By leading with our own example, I think we can create trust with the local communities, and through this trust, we can do amazing work. The third learning is to be able to create the necessary incentives for the citizens to act against climate crisis. We need to create long-term win-win partnerships between human and nature in order to have impact in the next decades. So in our case, what we do is we provide fishermen with a positive storytelling. We make them the positive actors in our fight against marine plastic pollution. On top of that, we provide them with a small remuneration for the plastic they collect from the sea. So in this way, they can have short-term benefits, long-term benefits, while at the same time, plastic is pulled out from the Mediterranean at a great extent. The last learning that we got from this experience is the engagement of young communities. We worked effectively with fishermen, but we couldn't have done that without talking to local schools, talking to local universities, discussing with fishermen family. From these discussions, a lot of ideas come out, and I see that the younger generation is full of drive, motivation, and passion to do something about the situation. They just need somebody to believe in them and show them a way, mentor them. This was the same in my case. And I believe that by mobilizing local young communities, we can create ripple effects that can have an actual impact on climate change. To sum up, if I, a young person from a small fishing community of Greece, can mobilize the fishermen of the Mediterranean to collect plastic from the sea, then I think everybody can mobilize their own communities, farmers, scientists, students, politicians, to act against climate change. As you said, we need to act, and we need to act now. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to discuss with you.
Thanks a lot, Lefteris, for this experience and sharing how you contribute to the solution in a very innovative way and socially engaging way. I think we've heard from the various panelists today that the challenge is gigantic, but it can be tackled. It can be tackled because we've got the scientific evidence, we've built it, we've created the explanation, and we translate it into messages to get political and multilateral action and commitment. And this is coming with COP22, I'm certain. But we've also seen that by engaging on the economic and social transformation, we can advance our agenda, and we can preserve the unique biodiversity and the unique ecosystem of the Mediterranean, both at sea and at land. And therefore, the message we've heard is one that says we need to take action, but it's not too late to take action. But the action is urgently needed, and commitment must be there, not only to save the Mediterranean, but to make it for future generation the beautiful area ecosystem that we as kids found when we were born, or where we're going on the shores of the Mediterranean. And it is a huge challenge, but I know, and we see, there is strong commitment to deliver positive results and to make it sustainable.
We have a couple of questions. One relates to the rights of nature, and this is directly asked to Lina Tode from Zoe in the UK. Have you thought about the introduction and implementation of the rights of nature at the core of your work, as that could help solve a lot of the issues that are affecting the Mediterranean region in one policy? We have also questions regarding the national recovery plans and Barcelona Convention. Will UNEP and MAP comment or provide recommendations on the national recovery plans, since this is a great opportunity to promote national sustainability plans and especially linking them to SDGs? Can compliance with prior obligations under the Barcelona Convention help contracting parties recover better from COVID? And how can Mediterranean countries that had been struggling economically, even and during the pandemic, respond to the call for a green renaissance? Thank you.
Okay, so I think we'll start with Lena on the rights of nature. And then Gaetano, if you don't mind, could I turn the second question to you? And I think we've got about still 15 minutes, so let's take these two questions and we can take another two and see where we are with time. Lena, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much for this difficult question. The rights of nature, we do talk about this a little bit in the SOED, looking at it from the point of view of the increase of environmentation that is happening in different countries. So most of the time we see processes that start from civil society asking for their rights of nature, of access to nature, etc. And there have been cases that are reported in the SOED. Another angle from which we look into this question is the payment for ecosystem services. Because we see for now that the ecosystem services that are provided to us, so can it be provisioning services of food, for example, or leisure services that we enjoy when we go and see the nature, these for in most of the cases. And this is something where we would like to move things into a different direction. And really take into account the rights of nature in the socio-economic system that we currently find in the Mediterranean. Did this answer the question?
I think it did. I don't know if anyone wants to add, otherwise I'll turn to Gaetano.
Yeah, thanks, Bruno. Yeah, in fact, if I may add, just to recall, and I think you are even better positioned than me in talking about this, that very recently at the 46th session of the UN Human Rights Council, there was an important resolution on human rights and the environment that was approved. And let's say that it is not the definitive response that we would have all liked to see, but still it is a very encouraging pronunciation of the panel towards enabling the continued walk towards having finally the right to a healthy environment recognized as a basic human rights. And this is in the context already of more than 150, if I remember correctly, countries that already refer one way or another to such a right in several instruments that they sign. So I think this is an important step. It's above the head of the Barcelona Convention, but I think it's something that UNEP has participated in and very proudly to continue also supporting. Now,
I join in. Indeed, it was. I think we can say it is an unprecedented step that was taken in Geneva with this recognition, and really is something that we can be really built upon for the future. Over to you again.
And in fact, and thanks to Lena also for the clear reference to what exactly the SOED says on this point. Now, on the other question that was about the national recovery plans, if I remember correctly. So I have to say, the general thing that we want to see is that these colossal sums that are flowing towards recovery must prioritize green paths. I mean, this is the essence of what we've we have been working on for years, and where we are discussing also today. So the flicking the green switch, as it was said, the national recovery plans are a crucial instrument to make it happen. The message is that, as always, investing in clean energy, in reduction of emissions, therefore, integrated water resource management, sustainable agriculture, just to name a few sectors, are going to pay off. And this is also what I gave the example of SECA just a few minutes ago. But there is no magic wand. So we are not in a position to identify the ideal national plans. The fact is that these national plans need to make sure that the recovery becomes a driver of a new relationship with nature, and becomes also a driver of new economic opportunities. Around the Mediterranean, a lot, with or without COVID, a lot of firms are already going green. Now, I want to say that we will be looking at national recovery plans if we are asked by our counterparts in governments. We certainly look forward to that, but our entire work, in fact, with or without COVID, as I said, is targeting this sort of green renaissance, as we called it before. One comment this brings to my mind also is the fact that it's the importance of the regional dimension of approaching these issues, hand in hand with the work that is done at the national level. Because the regional dimension brings a level of integration of approaches that possibly does not necessarily happen at the global level. I'm considering also our own mandate. I mean, we work on marine environment as Barcelona Convention, UNEP MAP, and that includes, as you have heard, pollution, maritime transport, biodiversity, sustainability, sustainable consumption and production, green entrepreneurships, etc., in an integrated way. At the global level, it's rare that you find this outside of UNEP itself. So even the multilateral environmental agreements generally have a very focused approach to biodiversity, to climate change, to trade of endangered species, etc. So the region brings together all these national realities and these national responses in a way that we believe contributes enormously to its progress towards the implementation of the SDGs. And I think that what's happening right now with the design of the national recovery plans is something that will contribute to this process. You can see I'm very passionate. My colleagues are very passionate. I'm really happy to have Lefteris with us, who brings the very local reality also into focus. And I think it is, and the reality of youth, because there is also this aspect that we cannot set aside. Bruno, there is a question about IMAP. I leave it to you whether you want us to respond or not, or maybe some other panelists to talk about monitoring and assessment. But I conclude saying that our passion is undeterred by COVID. We hope to go to Antalya with a package of decisions that will address also a number of the issues that have been raised by the participants today.
Thanks, Gaetano. It's not only that our passion is our passion is even higher because of COVID, because we've got an opportunity really to transform and do something far better than we did until now. Yes, there was this question about IMAP. Malu, maybe we can have another one too. I see we still have 5-6 minutes.
Yes, so we have a question on monitoring from a couple of people on what is the role of monitoring, IMAP, forecasting research and observation infrastructures in the Mediterranean, especially in establishing priorities. And this is also helpful in addition to the conservation of biodiversity and climate change. And then we have another question on change itself from Sonia Peña. The dimension of the crisis we are facing far outweigh the speed and scale of the responses and solutions we are putting forward. What is the one essential ingredient that is missing in your view to make change possible and urgently?
Oh, very complex question. I don't know if there's one essential ingredient which is missing. I'm tempted to turn again to Gaetano, but maybe there's also the biodiversity aspect that Lourdes wants to take. We start with Lourdes and then go to Gaetano.
Well, yes, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, monitoring is very important in this process as well, because it will facilitate the effectiveness of our progress and to have more insightful policy responses. So we need to have greater accountability on that. We need to improve the way we need to monitor and also to report back, because they will guide us in the right decision in terms of management, especially for species conservation and for protected areas as well. And without monitoring, we don't know if we are doing the right things or not. So it's the basis.
It is indeed a very important element. Monitoring, knowing where we're going, that's where the science comes in indeed, and enlighten the decisions, but there must be political and economic transformation decisions following, and that's really the call that we make as well to all stakeholders who are online, and that's why the COP22 is so important. Gaetano, you want to add?
Yeah, just to explain what this IMAP is, which has been mentioned, and that is an initiative of the Barcelona Convention, UNEP Barcelona Convention, and the entire system, of course, because my colleagues, starting with Lina and Plan Bleu, are on the front line of this work. IMAP is an integrated monitoring and assessment program, which is the culmination of more than 10 years of working on mainstreaming the ecosystem approach in what we are doing. And as Lourdes said, assessment is crucial. If we don't know what we are facing, or we know it in general terms, the responses cannot be, tailored to the challenges that are in front of us. So this IMAP is very ambitious, because the idea is to come up with a homogeneous set of data produced through an homogeneous process around the entire Mediterranean. And we know the differences in resources, in access to knowledge that exist around this basin. So we are working now with individual countries, in many cases also with the support of the European Union, to develop some national infrastructure around the infrastructure offered by the Barcelona Convention and our InfoRac regional activity center in Rome, Italy, to build their own capacity at the national level, so that when we issue a quality status report in 2023, it will be based on data that is, as I said, homogeneous and makes sense. It's like a puzzle where all the pieces fall into making a clear picture. And that's what we are working on. Very ambitious, very difficult, very expensive, especially at this time of COVID, but certainly something that the parties are on board and we are pushing for. I loved also the other question about what is the single ingredient. Let me start by saying that I wouldn't have an answer. But I think it is such a beautiful question that really, pushes all of us to think about it. If I need to come up with one, what would it be? And let me go by exclusion a little bit. I mean, it wouldn't be awareness, because there is a good level of awareness. It wouldn't be now scientific advance, because science, as you said, Bruno, has spoken, and we have enough of it to take action. I think at this moment, the real, it could be renewing commitments, but I would say that at this moment is really cooperation. And that cooperation is around the region in terms of governments, it's also and institutions, in a way, transversal way across societies, and you know, it's so encouraging to see Lefteris talk of how much he's doing now around the region, having started as a fisherman. It is cooperation also in terms vertical, so through the entire components that make a community. So for me, that, especially at this moment of COVID, that is what is needed. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Gaetano. And let me just take my moderator's hat away and put my regional director hat on to add on this one element. And I think it is in the title of also this webinar. It is making peace with nature. This is, at the end of the day, a human-made crisis. And as humans, we've got a responsibility to solve it, and we'll solve it by making peace with nature, by recognizing that we're part of an ecosystem, that economic and social development has got to be respectful of these ecosystems, has got to be aligned with the limits of this ecosystem, and that continuing with the current levels of pollution, of loss of biodiversity, and of non-action to curb climate change is just a recipe for disaster. So it's not one essential ingredient, but putting human at the center of the solution and at the center of the action is part of the answer. With this, colleagues, I'd really like to thank all the panelists, all the participants to this webinar. Thank the Gen once again. I think there's other questions. We won't have time to answer them now, but they will be answered at the end, if I'm not wrong, through the website, as we usually do. You will also find a summary of this webinar on the Gen website, and you can also link on social medias to follow and see the follow-up of it. It was a really important moment, and also bringing it to International Geneva was crucial. So thanks to all partners, and with this, I wish you a good day further. Diana, over to you if you want to conclude.
We also want to thank you, Bruno, and to thank all the little hands that have been working and making this event possible today, both at the UNEP MAP Secretariat, but also all the teams that were involved from the various institutions that were represented today. And maybe just bringing to your attention the upcoming events from at the end of this month, we will start discussing nature-based solutions, and we will be regularly online with our colleagues of IUCN discussing this important topic. And we will start on 26 April by discussing nature-based solutions and health. You will find all the information on the website. And so with this, I think we can close this event. And once more, thank all the panelists that joined, and also you, the attendees, who made it until now with us. And also thanks who finally joined us on Facebook when we were already half the event ongoing. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
For organizing
Diana.
this event, and I appreciate all the participants, and we will do our utmost to convey all your messages to Ankara, then to Antalya. It is our foreign minister's hometown. He is paying a particular attention for the successful hosting of this event, I mean this conference. So thank you again.
Thank you, Excellency.